Hello, my dear friends. Let us move very gently now, far away from European castles and into another world entirely. The air feels different here. The stone walls of Europe are gone, replaced by wood, paper screens, and quiet gardens. We arrive in feudal Japan, many centuries ago during the age of the samurai and the great daimyo lords. Morning has not yet fully begun. A pale blue light sits over the rooftops, and mist hangs low above the ground. Inside a large residence and part palace, part fortress, the household is already awake. This is not the imperial court of Kyoto, but the estate of a powerful regional lord. His residence is carefully arranged. Wooden corridors connect multiple buildings. Sliding paper doors separate rooms instead of heavy gates. Outside, gravel paths lead through small gardens where ponds reflect the early sky. Everything appears calm, ordered, and quiet. Within this residence lives a woman whose life is structured by strict rules and expectations, a concubine. To understand her life, we must first understand her position. In feudal Japan, marriage among the ruling class was often political. A daimyo married a primary wife, usually from another powerful family, to strengthen alliances. But a lord might also keep concubines. Their purpose was not romance in the modern sense, it was lineage. A household required heirs, and more children meant greater security for the clan. This did not make her a servant, but it also did not make her equal to the official wife. She lived somewhere in between, respected, but watched carefully. Her day begins before sunrise. She wakes on a futon laid neatly upon tatami mats. The room is simple. There are no heavy furnishings, only a writing table, folded clothing, and a painted screen. The silence is deep. The household believes the early morning hours carry purity, and important people rise early to show discipline. An attendant slides the door open quietly. She kneels and greets her with a bow. Conversation is soft and minimal. Much communication happens through gesture rather than speech. Even the way tea is presented reflects hierarchy. First comes washing. Water is brought in wooden basins. Cleanliness in Japan is not merely comfort, it is moral and social order. Hair is arranged carefully. Clothing is selected according to season and rank. The concubine does not dress extravagantly. Her kimono is elegant but restrained. She must appear refined, never attention-seeking. Every color and pattern communicates status. By the time the sun touches the garden stones, she is prepared for the day. Her morning is not idle, she studies. Education mattered greatly in elite households. She practices calligraphy, carefully brushing characters onto paper. The strokes must be smooth and controlled. Handwriting reveals personality, discipline, and upbringing. A poorly written character could harm her reputation more than a spoken mistake. After calligraphy, she reads poetry. Classical Chinese literature and Japanese waka poetry were expected knowledge. A cultured woman reflected well upon the household. Conversation later in the day might involve quoting a poem that matches the season. Even this was part of social intelligence. The residence slowly fills with life. Servants cross corridors carrying trays. Samurai guards stand quietly at outer gates. The official wife's wing remains separate, and the two women rarely meet directly. Their relationship is formal, not hostile, but carefully distant. Rank must remain clear to preserve order. Late morning, she walks in the garden. This walk is not leisure, it is presentation. Members of the household may see her, and her composure matters. She walks slowly, steps measured, sleeves held properly. Even posture carries meaning. A concubine's greatest protection is dignity. Any appearance of arrogance could create resentment. Any appearance of carelessness could damage her future, because her future depends on one thing: producing a child. If she bears a son, her position strengthens greatly. If she does not, she may remain quietly within the household for years without real influence. Therefore, her behavior is observed constantly, not cruelly, but attentively. The household is not simply a family, it is a political structure. At midday she eats, but never alone in public halls. Her meals are brought to a private chamber. The food is balanced: rice, fish, vegetables, soup. Moderation is admired. Excess suggests poor character. Even appetite becomes part of reputation. Afternoon hours are the quietest. She embroiders, writes letters, or practices music on a koto instrument. Music carries deep importance in courtly life. A refined performance reflects harmony of mind. Sound drifts softly into the corridor, never loud enough to disturb. She does not summon the Lord. That would be improper. Instead, she waits. In feudal Japan, patience itself was a virtue. The Lord decided when to visit her rooms. Some evenings he would not come. Some evenings he would. Her role was to remain prepared without showing expectation. Emotional restraint was considered strength. As the sun lowers, lanterns are lit along the walkways. Shadows grow long across the paper screens. Servants move quieter than before. The residence begins its night routine. Tonight a messenger arrives. The Lord will visit. The attendants prepare the chamber carefully. Bedding arranged, incense lit softly, writing materials removed to leave only calm simplicity. The environment reflects harmony and respect, not display. Every detail communicates balance. When he arrives, conversation comes first. They may discuss poetry, weather, or news from the province. Formal courtesy remains even in private. The relationship is structured by etiquette as much as feeling. In this world, order matters more than expression. Later, the corridor falls silent again. The night deepens, but her role does not end with evening. If she becomes pregnant, her life changes entirely. The household physicians monitor her health. Ritual prayers are offered for safe birth. The child will not belong solely to her. The child belongs to the clan. A son might inherit power one day. Therefore, the entire residence quietly watches time pass. And so, as the lanterns dim and the garden returns to stillness, we leave her resting within a house that never truly sleeps, where status, duty, patience, and careful behavior shape every hour of her life. We will continue from here, staying inside this quiet world of paper walls and measured footsteps, where each day repeats with calm precision, and every small action carries lasting meaning. Morning has fully arrived now, and soft sunlight passes through the paper screens, turning the inside of the residence warm and pale gold. The household is no longer silent. Footsteps move across wooden corridors, but still there is no loudness. Feudal Japanese residences were built around quiet. Floors were polished so movement could be heard gently. Voices were controlled. Even laughter was restrained. The calm atmosphere was not accidental. It reflected discipline, and discipline reflected order. Inside her chamber, the concubine does not hurry. Haste suggested poor upbringing. She sits formally, knees folded beneath her on the tatami, and her attendants bring a small tray with tea. The act of drinking tea is slow and deliberate. The cup is turned slightly before lifting. The sleeve is held carefully so it does not brush the floor. These gestures are not decoration. They communicate refinement. In this world, behavior itself was a language. After tea, she prepares for another important part of her day: correspondence. She writes letters, but not personal letters as we think today. Her writing connects households. A message to a relative, to a sponsor family, or to a senior lady within the estate helps maintain relationships that support her security. Every sentence must be polite and balanced. The wording follows patterns learned since childhood. A letter too casual would appear disrespectful. A letter too elaborate would appear insincere. The skill lies in harmony. Outside, in the training yard, samurai practice. The sound of wooden practice swords occasionally reaches the interior halls, muted by distance. The concubine never enters those areas. The household is divided carefully. The outer grounds belong to warriors and administration. The inner residence belongs to women, children, and attendants. Crossing these spaces without permission would disturb hierarchy. By late morning, senior women of the household may visit. These women, often relatives of the lord or wives of trusted retainers, observe her quietly. The visit appears friendly, but it carries meaning. They study her manners, her health, her posture. A concubine is expected to be calm and composed. Even small signs, fatigue, irritability, or nervous movement, are noticed. Because if she is to bear a child, the household wants assurance she reflects stability. She serves them tea personally. This is an important moment. Serving tea is not a servant's task here. It is a demonstration of character. She kneels, bows, and pours carefully, never spilling a drop. The conversation remains gentle. They speak about seasonal flowers, weather, poetry, and occasionally news from neighboring provinces. Politics is never spoken directly, yet everyone understands its presence. When the visitors leave, she returns again to study. She practices music, placing the koto across the floor. Her fingers move slowly across the strings. The melody is soft and controlled. Music in elite Japanese culture was not performance for applause. It was cultivation of inner calm. A woman able to play gracefully was believed to possess emotional discipline, a trait valued within a household where conflict could easily arise. Afternoon light grows brighter, and she takes another garden walk. The garden is carefully designed to appear natural, yet every stone and tree is intentionally placed. A small pond reflects the sky. Carp move beneath the surface. She pauses near the water, not simply to relax, but to be seen behaving properly. Even being alone, she maintains posture. Servants nearby notice. In this residence, one is never truly unwatched. The official wife lives in another section of the house. They rarely meet directly, but their presence shapes each other's lives. The primary wife manages the household authority. The concubine must show respect at all times. Any sign of rivalry would disturb harmony, and harmony was essential to maintaining the lord's reputation. Therefore, their relationship exists in careful balance. Polite greetings, formal exchanges, but emotional distance. As evening approaches, the atmosphere changes subtly. Lanterns are prepared. Servants sweep walkways. Meals are cooked. The concubine bathes in a wooden tub filled with warm water. Bathing is not only cleaning, but ritual purification. Scented woods may be added lightly to the water. Afterward, her hair is arranged again and a fresh kimono is chosen appropriate for the season and time of day. Now she waits. Waiting is perhaps the most defining part of her life. She cannot request attention. She cannot ask when the Lord will visit. She must simply remain ready, emotionally calm whether he comes or not. Some nights he stays in council meetings. Some nights he visits the main wife. Some nights he travels. And sometimes he walks quietly down her corridor. During this waiting, she occupies herself with reading or calligraphy. Yet beneath the calm, her future depends on possibility. If she becomes pregnant, her importance rises. Servants treat her differently. Physicians attend carefully. The clan records the event. If she does not, years may pass in unchanged routine. Night deepens. Crickets sound faintly beyond the garden walls. A messenger's footsteps approach along the corridor. The attendants bow. The Lord will come tonight. Preparation begins immediately but quietly. Bedding is arranged with perfect neatness. Incense is lit very lightly, never strong. The room must feel peaceful, not extravagant. She kneels near the entrance, composed and silent. When he enters, she bows deeply. Conversation remains gentle and respectful. They may speak about the harvest, a poem, or events in a nearby province. Even private meetings remain framed by etiquette. After he leaves, the attendants return and the lantern is dimmed. The house grows still again. She lies down upon the futon, but sleep may not come quickly. Her life is steady, structured, and quiet, yet filled with uncertainty about the future. Outside, the night air settles over the residence, and the wooden buildings rest beneath the moonlight. Within these paper walls, her existence continues day after day in measured rhythm, dignity, patience, observation, and hope, forming a life both protected and constrained at the same time. And we remain here, in this calm world of soft footsteps and silent expectations, ready to follow another day as it begins again with the first pale light of morning. Before the sun rises again, the household is already preparing for another cycle of duties, and the concubine wakes not to noise but to a faint change in light filtering through the paper screens. Dawn in feudal Japan was not marked by loud bells or shouting servants. Instead, the sky itself announced morning, and the rhythm of the residents followed the sky. She sits up slowly, folding her bedding with practiced care because leaving a futon disordered suggested a restless mind. Every small act reflected character, and character reflected upbringing, and upbringing reflected the honor of the family that had sent her here. Her attendants enter quietly, bowing as they slide the door open just enough to pass through. They carry warm water for washing and a small tray with rice porridge and tea. Breakfast is simple and never indulgent. Moderation is a virtue admired in elite society. Eating lightly shows self-control, and self-control is considered evidence of inner harmony. Even appetite, therefore, becomes part of how she is judged by those around her. After eating, she prepares for morning prayers. While samurai followed codes of loyalty and service, elite households also practiced spiritual discipline. A small household shrine stands in a side alcove, and she kneels there, hands together, bowing her head. The prayer is quiet and private, but its meaning is public. A woman connected to a ruling clan must appear spiritually composed, because spiritual order symbolized social order. The household believes calm hearts lead to stable families. Soon afterward, she begins another important routine, learning household knowledge. Contrary to modern assumptions, a concubine was not idle decoration. She had to understand the internal life of the estate. Senior attendants teach her about seasonal storage of food, arrangement of robes for winter and summer, and the etiquette of receiving visiting women from allied families. She memorizes proper greetings for each rank, because using an incorrect form of address could insult a visiting noblewoman and create tension between clans. The late morning hours bring structured activity. She practices writing again, but this time copying formal phrases used in official household records. Calligraphy in feudal Japan was more than art. It was proof of discipline and education. Smooth, steady brushstrokes showed patience and balance. A shaky line suggested emotional instability. Those who later read her writing would judge her character without ever meeting her directly. Outside, the estate grows busier. Messengers arrive on horseback carrying sealed letters. Servants move with trays of supplies. Children of retainers practice manners in small courtyards under supervision. From a distance she watches, always aware that she lives inside a political household, not merely a residence. Every birth, every alliance, every marriage connected to the survival of the clan. At midday, she changes into a lighter kimono appropriate for the hour. Clothing in feudal Japan followed seasonal awareness. Fabrics and colors mirrored nature. Pale greens in spring, soft blues in summer, deeper tones in autumn. Wearing a color out of season would suggest ignorance. Therefore, she learns to associate each garment with time of year and weather, another quiet form of education shaping her place in society. In the afternoon, she receives instruction in conversation. An older court lady explains appropriate topics, poetry about changing seasons, reflections on nature, and historical anecdotes from classical literature. Direct opinions about politics are avoided. A woman who spoke too boldly could be seen as disruptive. Yet she must not be silent either, because silence could be interpreted as ignorance. The skill lies in balanced speech, thoughtful but restrained. Later, she spends time preparing small gifts. These are not personal presents but social tools. When a noblewoman visits, a carefully wrapped cloth or piece of embroidery may be offered. The quality and presentation communicate respect. Through these exchanges, relationships are built quietly, without open negotiation. This gentle diplomacy was an essential part of elite female life. As evening approaches, she again bathes and dresses carefully. The household transitions into a calmer rhythm. Lantern light replaces sunlight, and shadows soften the wooden corridors. She does not know whether the Lord will visit tonight. Her expression must remain the same regardless. Showing anticipation would be improper. Showing disappointment would be equally improper. Emotional control becomes daily discipline. During waiting hours, she composes poetry. Short waka poems describe moonlight, autumn leaves, or evening wind. These poems are sometimes sent to the Lord after a visit, sometimes kept private. Poetry allows expression without direct statement. Feelings can be suggested gently rather than spoken openly, preserving dignity while still communicating thought. The night deepens. Guards move softly outside. Somewhere beyond the outer walls, an owl calls. The residence settles into near silence, and she lies down again on her bedding. Whether the Lord comes or not, tomorrow will repeat the same structure: careful behavior, constant observation, and patient endurance. Thus her life moves not in dramatic events but in repetition, each day almost identical, yet each day important. In this steady rhythm, she learns how to exist within a world where honor depends not on bold action, but on controlled conduct. Her world is quiet, measured and watchful, shaped by tradition stronger than individual desire. And as another dawn approaches, the cycle will begin again. Another morning slowly returns, and with it we begin to understand that her life is not measured by excitement or sudden change, but by seasons. In feudal Japan, time itself felt different from the modern world. There were no mechanical clocks ruling every hour inside the residence. Instead, the day followed sunlight, and the year followed nature. For the concubine, the passing of seasons shaped her duties just as strongly as any instruction from the household. In early spring, the estate changed its atmosphere. Plum blossoms appeared first, delicate and pale, and their arrival mattered. She was expected to notice them. Awareness of nature was not a hobby. It was a sign of cultivation. When she spoke to visiting women or to the Lord, she might reference the blossoms gently, perhaps composing a short poem about their brief life. This demonstrated education and sensitivity, qualities highly valued in elite culture. Her attendance helped her change clothing to match the season. The layered kimono became lighter in color. Fabric thickness adjusted to temperature. Even scent changed. A softer incense replaced the heavier winter fragrance. These details communicated refinement to anyone who entered her chamber. Without saying a word, the room itself expressed harmony with the natural world. During spring festivals, the household held small ceremonies. She did not sit beside the official wife or the highest-ranking women, but she was present. She bowed at the proper moments and offered seasonal gifts prepared in advance. Participation in ritual reinforced her place within the household hierarchy. She was visible, but carefully positioned. Summer brought different challenges. Heat and humidity filled the wooden buildings, and comfort was limited. Paper screens allowed air to move, but they offered little insulation. She learned to maintain composure even when the air felt heavy. A fan became part of daily movement, yet she could not fan herself carelessly. The motion had to remain slow and graceful. Even discomfort was expected to be hidden, because visible irritation suggested weak discipline. In summer evenings, she sometimes sat near open corridors overlooking the garden. Fireflies appeared above the grass and reflected in the pond. These quiet moments allowed her to write poetry describing light and darkness. Such writing was not merely personal expression, it was cultural participation. Sharing a poem later could strengthen a relationship more effectively than a direct request. Autumn was considered the most beautiful season, and therefore the most socially important. Visiting families often came to admire the changing leaves. She prepared for these visits carefully. Her kimono colors deepened to match the red and gold foliage. Tea gatherings became more frequent. During these gatherings, conversation followed subtle rules. No one spoke loudly. No one dominated discussion. The concubine practiced responding gently, allowing others to feel respected while still showing intelligence. Winter brought quiet. Snow sometimes covered the courtyard stones and travel slowed. The household spent longer hours indoors. During this time, she studied more intensively, reading classical tales, practicing brushwork, and learning songs played on small instruments. Winter was a season of preparation. A woman who used these months wisely improved her standing. It was also during winter that pregnancies were watched most carefully. If she showed signs of carrying a child, physicians and senior women monitored her health. Food changed to support strength. Prayers were offered at the shrine. The entire household became attentive, though still calm on the surface. The potential birth of a child affected succession, and therefore everyone quietly understood its importance. Throughout all seasons, she remained aware that her identity depended on patience. She could not command, she could not openly compete, and she could not demand affection. Her influence existed only through steadiness of behavior and respect for tradition. In this society, endurance itself created security. As evening falls again and the sky darkens beyond the paper screens, lantern light glows softly along the corridors. Servants pass quietly. Somewhere in another wing, the main wife oversees household matters. The Lord meets with retainers discussing land and loyalty. And within her chamber, the concubine continues her calm routine, living a life both protected and restricted, defined by ritual more than choice. The seasons continue to turn, and with them her days flow together in quiet repetition, shaping a life that appears gentle on the surface yet carries constant expectation beneath it. As we remain inside this quiet residence, we begin to notice that her life is not shaped only by the Lord or the household, but also by something less visible: rank. Feudal Japan was a world carefully ordered, and every person knew their place within that order. For the concubine, understanding rank was as important as understanding language or etiquette, because a single mistake in hierarchy could damage her position more than any spoken insult. Within the women's quarters alone, there existed layers of status. At the highest stood the official wife, who managed household authority and represented the clan publicly. Beneath her were senior ladies, often relatives of powerful retainers, who supervised daily operations. Beneath them were younger attendants learning court manners. The concubine stood between worlds, higher than attendants, yet not equal to the wife. Because of this, every interaction required careful balance. She bowed deeper to some, received bows from others, and spoke with different levels of formality depending on who stood before her. Morning visitors sometimes included mothers of young samurai or daughters of allied families sent for education. These meetings were gentle but meaningful. The way she welcomed them reflected upon the Lord himself. She offered tea, listened to conversation, and spoke with quiet respect. Even her posture during these meetings communicated stability. If she appeared arrogant, the clan risked appearing proud. If she appeared uncertain, the clan risked appearing weak. During such visits, she learned another skill: listening more than speaking. Silence used properly was valued. A thoughtful pause before answering suggested wisdom. Immediate response suggested impatience. The culture admired restraint, and so she practiced it constantly. Over time, this patience became natural, and her movements slowed to match the rhythm expected within elite society. By midday, she assisted in small household responsibilities. Though she did not cook or clean personally, she supervised preparation of seasonal garments, checked embroidery intended as diplomatic gifts, and reviewed the arrangement of storage chests. These tasks might seem ordinary, yet they formed part of the clan's reputation. A well-managed household reflected a well-governed domain. Children sometimes visited her chambers, particularly young daughters of retainers learning etiquette. She taught them simple poems and proper greetings. Through these quiet lessons she gained gentle influence, because future wives of samurai would remember the woman who taught them manners. Influence in this world did not come from command. It grew slowly through respect. Afternoon hours also included health rituals. Physicians recommended certain foods and herbal preparations to maintain balance. Rice, fish, pickled vegetables, and tea formed most meals. Heavy eating was discouraged. Maintaining calm body and calm mind were believed connected. She walked slowly in the corridor after meals to aid digestion, always accompanied by an attendant but never hurried. In the late afternoon, she sometimes watched falconers training birds in the outer garden from a distance behind a screen. She could not join them openly, yet observing such activities connected her to the broader life of the estate. The Lord's authority extended through warriors, farmers, and officials, and she lived quietly at the center of that structure. As evening approached, a messenger might arrive bringing news, a border dispute, a successful harvest, or a visiting delegation expected soon. When important guests were anticipated, preparation began immediately. Rooms were cleaned again, fresh tatami placed if necessary, and clothing selected carefully for the occasion. She might be asked to appear during a formal greeting, standing slightly behind the official wife, but visible enough to show the household's refinement. Night once again brought waiting. Some evenings the Lord did not come, and she accepted this without outward disappointment. Emotional steadiness was her shield. The household observed how she reacted not only to attention, but to absence. A composed woman earned quiet respect. When finally the residents slept, the corridors dark except for small lanterns, she remained part of a living system larger than herself. Her life moved through observation, patience, and small acts repeated daily. She possessed comfort compared to common villagers, yet she lacked freedom of choice. Protection and limitation existed together, and so another day closes gently within the wooden halls, the garden resting beneath moonlight. While she lies awake briefly listening to night insects beyond the paper screens, knowing tomorrow will begin again with the same careful steps and the same quiet expectations that define her place in feudal Japan. Now we move deeper into an aspect of her life that quietly shapes everything: motherhood, or the possibility of it. Within a feudal household, the concubine's importance is always connected to potential heirs. No one speaks about it openly each day, yet everyone understands it. Her behavior, her diet, her health, even the seasons are watched with careful attention, because the future of the clan may rest upon her. When early signs of pregnancy appear, the atmosphere around her changes immediately, though gently. Senior women begin visiting more often. They do not question her directly. Instead, they observe her energy, her appetite, and her expression. A physician is called discreetly, and herbal tonics are prepared. The news is not shouted through the residence. It spreads quietly, almost like a soft ripple moving through still water. Her daily routine becomes calmer. She no longer practices music for long hours. She walks less in the garden and rests more frequently on cushions placed near open screens where fresh air enters. Certain foods are recommended: warm soups, rice prepared softly, and herbal tea believed to strengthen the body. Cold foods are avoided. The household believes balance protects both mother and child. Prayers begin as well. At the household shrine, offerings are placed for safe birth. Paper charms are hung near her chamber doorway. They are not decorations, but symbols of protection. Even samurai warriors, trained for battle, respect these quiet rituals because birth is seen as just as uncertain as war. Both depend on forces beyond control. Her attendants now stay closer to her than before. At night, one sleeps in the same room, waking if she stirs. Movement across the residence becomes slower. She no longer kneels for long ceremonies but sits on cushions. The official wife may send gifts, cloth, sweets, or small protective charms, maintaining harmony within the household. Even if their relationship remains formal, the birth of a child concerns the entire clan. Months pass this way, measured not by dates but by careful observation. Senior women teach her breathing techniques and positions for comfort. They share their own experiences softly, guiding her through uncertainty. Despite the quiet environment, anxiety exists beneath the calm surface. Childbirth in feudal times carried real risk, and everyone knows it without speaking openly. When the time of birth approaches, the residence grows very still. The outer gates remain guarded. Servants move quietly to avoid disturbance. A birthing room is prepared with clean mats and fresh cloth. Only women remain inside: midwives, attendants, and older female relatives. Men, including the Lord, wait outside in separate rooms, informed only occasionally of progress. Hours may pass, sometimes a full day. The household listens for the sound that matters most, the cry of a newborn. When at last it comes, relief spreads through the corridors. If the child is healthy, prayers of thanks follow immediately. If the child is a boy, celebration grows stronger, though still controlled and dignified. After birth, her status changes noticeably. Visitors bow slightly deeper. Servants respond more quickly. She receives better rooms and closer protection because she has given the clan continuity. The child, however, belongs not only to her, but to the household. Wet nurses may assist. Tutors will one day teach the child. The clan raises its heir collectively. Her days now revolve around care of the infant. She wakes frequently during the night. Attendants help, but she remains central to the child's comfort. Gentle lullabies replace evening poetry. She holds the child near open screens so fresh air passes softly over the room. Physicians visit regularly to ensure health. Yet even in this warmer stage of life, restraint remains. She cannot claim authority equal to the official wife. She must remain respectful and balanced. Her new security depends on continued composure. A concubine who bore a child gained influence, but only if she maintained harmony within the residence. So as evening settles once again across the estate, the household listens to the quiet breathing of a newborn within paper walls. Outside, guards patrol under lantern light, and beyond them the wider feudal world continues. Villages, fields, and distant roads, unaware of the small life that may one day shape leadership. And within her chamber, holding the child gently, she understands that her existence has changed forever. Yet her daily discipline continues, guided by the same careful traditions that govern every corner of the residence. As the months pass and the child grows stronger, her life enters a quieter but more complex stage. Motherhood brings new respect, yet it also brings new responsibility. Within the wooden walls of the residence, the child is no longer only hers. The child represents the continuation of the clan. From the moment the infant can sit upright, lessons begin. Not formal lessons, but habits. The way the child is held, the way the child greets elders, the way the child observes silence during prayer, all of these details matter, and she as mother becomes the first teacher. Morning begins earlier now. The child wakes before the sun has fully risen, and attendants help prepare warm cloths and light food. She feeds and comforts the infant with patience, knowing that calmness in a mother encourages calmness in the child. Senior women observe occasionally, offering advice about posture, tone of voice, and discipline. They do not interfere openly, but they guide her gently, because raising a future heir requires more than affection. It requires training in restraint and dignity. Her clothing remains elegant but becomes slightly more practical. Sleeves are tied back when she carries the child. Fabrics are chosen for comfort as well as presentation. Even while caring for the infant, she must appear composed if visitors pass by. The household never forgets hierarchy. If the official wife enters the corridor, she bows deeply, even while holding the child, demonstrating that respect does not weaken because of motherhood. By midday, tutors sometimes visit to observe the child's early development. Though formal education lies years ahead, signs of temperament are watched closely. A calm child is praised. A restless one is gently corrected. She learns that her influence shapes not only affection but future character. Her speech must be measured even when soothing a crying infant. Loud emotion is discouraged. Steadiness is admired. Afternoons bring quieter moments when the child sleeps. During this time, she resumes some of her earlier studies. She practices calligraphy again, though more slowly, and reads classical stories aloud softly so the child becomes accustomed to cultured language. In this world, refinement begins early. Music, too, returns in gentle form. She plays short melodies on the koto, believing that harmonious sound calms the spirit of both mother and child. Visitors increase once word spreads that the heir is thriving. Allied families send gifts, small garments, charms for protection, and folded letters expressing loyalty. Each gift is acknowledged formally. She supervises the careful storage of these items, understanding that every object represents a political connection. Her chamber becomes a place of quiet diplomacy, where gratitude and respect are expressed in controlled gestures rather than grand speeches. As the child grows into toddlerhood, the residence adapts. Soft mats are placed along corridors. Attendants follow closely when the child begins to walk. She watches with both pride and caution, aware that even small accidents would be discussed widely. The heir must appear healthy and strong. Her careful supervision protects not only the child but her own position within the household. Evenings now feel fuller. When the Lord visits, the child may be present briefly. He observes his son with measured approval, never overly expressive but clearly attentive. She remains composed during these moments, allowing father and child to interact while maintaining formal respect. Afterward, when the corridor's quiet, she reflects on how her life has shifted. She is no longer simply a concubine waiting quietly for attention. She is the mother of potential power, yet the structure around her remains unchanged. The official wife continues to manage the broader household. Senior retainers still control political matters. She moves within defined boundaries, respected but not independent. Her security rests on continued harmony, and harmony requires humility. Night settles again over the estate. Lanterns cast long shadows along wooden beams. The child sleeps beside her, breathing softly. Outside, the guards change shifts under the moonlight. Beyond the walls, fields lie still, villages rest, and the wider feudal world continues its slow rhythm. Within these quiet rooms, her days flow steadily. No dramatic rebellion, no sudden freedom, only patience, duty, and careful cultivation of influence through motherhood. And as the seasons continue to turn, we remain here, following her life through repetition and quiet strength, where survival depends not on boldness but on unwavering composure within a world ruled by tradition. As years begin to pass inside the residence, the pace of her life changes once again, not because the rules disappear, but because she slowly learns how to live within them. At first, the household shaped her every movement, but now she understands the rhythm so deeply that she moves with it naturally. The wooden corridors, the sliding screens, the garden paths, and even the sound of distant sandals on the veranda have become familiar parts of her world. Her child is no longer an infant. The small figure now walks confidently along the tatami floors, guided by attendants but always watched. Early instruction begins quietly. A tutor kneels across from the child and teaches simple greetings. Bowing properly is one of the first lessons. The angle of the head, the placement of the hands, and the stillness after rising are practiced again and again. She watches carefully, correcting gently when needed, never sharply. Discipline in this household is calm, never loud. With the child growing, her own responsibilities expand. She must ensure the child understands respect toward the official wife and senior members of the clan. During formal visits, she kneels beside him, guiding his posture and whispering reminders softly. These moments are important because every person present observes not only the child, but also the mother who shaped him. The residence itself continues its daily cycle. Messengers still arrive with sealed scrolls. Retainers meet with the Lord in distant rooms discussing land, taxes, and alliances. She rarely hears the details, yet she feels their presence. When tension exists beyond the estate, the atmosphere inside becomes quieter. Servants speak less. Footsteps become softer. Even without direct knowledge, she senses when the clan faces difficulty. Her afternoons now include teaching as well as learning. Young girls from allied families are sometimes placed under her supervision to observe manners. She instructs them in folding garments, greeting elders, and preparing tea trays. Her tone remains gentle, never proud. The household values a woman who guides without appearing to command. During seasonal ceremonies, she appears more often beside the child. Festivals honoring ancestors require the family to gather in formal arrangement. Incense burns slowly in the shrine room, and prayers are spoken with steady voices. She bows with the others, showing unity. In these moments, her place becomes clearer. She stands neither at the front nor at the back, but firmly within the structure. Evenings now hold a different kind of waiting. Earlier, she waited for the Lord's attention. Now she waits for news about the child's future. Discussions among senior retainers sometimes include plans for education, training, and eventual responsibilities. If the child continues to thrive, tutors in writing, history, and martial discipline will soon take a greater role. She knows that as the child grows, he will spend less time within her chambers. She prepares for this quietly. She begins teaching independence gently, allowing attendants to guide him more often while she observes. The culture values emotional restraint, and she must practice it as well. A mother's attachment cannot interfere with the clan's expectations. She shows affection in calm gestures rather than visible emotion. At night, she resumes some earlier habits, writing poetry and practicing music. But her thoughts now often drift toward the future. Her position has become more secure than in her early days, yet she understands its limits. Influence exists, but authority remains elsewhere. She cannot shape political decisions, only the character of the one who may someday hold power. The residence settles again into quiet darkness. Lanterns flicker along the corridors. The child sleeps in a nearby room watched by attendants. She sits for a moment near the open screen, listening to the night wind move through the garden trees. Crickets sound beyond the walls, steady and calm. In this gentle stillness, her life reveals its true nature, not dramatic, not tragic, but structured. A life lived within boundaries, where patience creates survival and dignity creates respect. The years continue to move forward in the same quiet rhythm, and within that rhythm she learns to exist not as a visitor to the household, but as a permanent part of its memory. Time now moves forward almost without being noticed, and the residence changes in small ways that only those who live within it can feel. The child, once carried carefully through the corridors, is now old enough to leave the inner chambers for lessons with male tutors. One morning, attendants arrive earlier than usual, and his clothing is different, more formal, prepared for instruction beyond the women's quarters. She kneels beside him to adjust the collar and smooth the fabric, her movement steady even though she understands what this moment means. From this day onward, he will spend many hours away from her rooms. The transition happens quietly. No ceremony announces it, yet the household treats it with importance. A senior retainer comes to escort the child. The boy bows first to the shrine, then to the official wife, and finally to her. She returns the bow with perfect calm. She does not hold him tightly or show outward sadness. In feudal Japan, emotional control is expected, especially at moments of change. Affection is expressed through dignity, not display. After he leaves, her chamber feels larger than before. The toys and small garments are removed carefully and stored. Attendants clean and rearrange the room so it returns to the calm order it held years earlier. The silence that follows is different from the waiting she once knew. Before, she waited for possibility. Now she waits for news. Reports from tutors about his progress in reading, writing, and etiquette. From time to time he returns briefly in the evenings to greet her. His posture is straighter now, his speech more formal. Tutors have begun teaching him loyalty, respect, and discipline. She listens to his recitations of poems and lessons, correcting softly if he forgets a word. These short meetings become precious but remain controlled. The household expects her to encourage strength, not attachment. Her own role shifts again. Without constant childcare, she resumes deeper involvement in internal affairs of the women's quarters. She oversees preparation of ceremonial clothing, checks inventories of stored rice and fabrics, and helps organize seasonal observances. Senior attendants now consult her more frequently. Her experience grants quiet authority, though she still speaks with humility. Visitors also treat her differently. Noble women greet her with warmer respect because she has successfully raised a child to the age of training. In this society, Endurance over years matters more than sudden achievement. She has proven reliability, and reliability earns trust. As the boy grows into youth, she begins instructing him in softer arts when he visits: poetry, proper tone of voice, and sensitivity to seasonal change. Samurai training will teach strength, but she teaches composure. She reminds him to speak gently to servants and to bow carefully to elders. Through these lessons, she shapes the character behind the future rank. Evenings continue with familiar calm. She still practices calligraphy by lamplight, writing lines from classical literature onto smooth paper. Sometimes she sends a poem to him through an attendant, not as a command, but as guidance. In this culture, advice often arrives through metaphor rather than direct instruction. Outside the residence, the political world continues to shift. Alliances change, harvests vary, and distant conflicts occasionally bring tension. When such news arrives, she notices subtle changes: more meetings, more messengers, longer councils late into the night. Though she does not participate, she understands the significance. Her son's future depends upon the stability of the clan. Night settles again, and she sits quietly near the open screen, listening to wind moving through bamboo leaves. The house is peaceful, yet she knows her life has entered its final stage of influence. She no longer waits to gain position. She now preserves it through guidance and steadiness. And so her days continue, calm and measured, shaped by years of discipline. The concubine who once entered the residence uncertain and watched now becomes a quiet pillar within it, not powerful in command, but powerful in continuity. A presence that holds memory, teaches restraint, and prepares the next generation to carry the clan forward. By now, many years have passed inside the residence, though daily life still moves with the same steady rhythm of wood floors, sliding doors, and quiet voices. The boy she once carried now spends most of his days in the outer compounds, learning the duties expected of a young samurai heir. She sees him less often, and this distance is intentional. Feudal households believed a future leader must grow beyond the protection of the inner chambers. From an early age, he learns writing, discipline, and formal loyalty to his father and clan. She understands this, yet her role does not disappear. It changes into something quieter and deeper. When he visits in the evenings, he no longer comes running through corridors. He walks slowly, bows properly at the threshold, and kneels before speaking. She responds the same way, maintaining the dignity of their relationship. Conversation becomes more thoughtful. He recites history lessons about past rulers and famous battles, and she listens carefully, guiding his tone and reminding him of humility. Strength without restraint, she tells him softly, can bring disorder to a household. Within the women's quarters, her influence continues to grow. Younger attendants now come to her for advice rather than to the older supervisors. She explains how to greet visiting noblewomen, how to prepare the correct incense for each season, and how to arrange a room so it feels calm when guests enter. These teachings are not written in manuals. They pass from one generation to another through observation. In this way, she becomes a quiet teacher of tradition. The official wife still manages the formal authority of the household, and their relationship remains respectful. Over time, a gentle understanding forms between them. Years of living within the same structure soften earlier distance. They exchange seasonal gifts and sometimes share brief conversations about the well-being of the clan's children. Neither crosses the boundaries of rank, Yet both recognize that harmony within the residence protects the family's reputation outside it. Her afternoons often return to study. She copies poetry, not because she must now prove education, but because writing preserves calm. The steady motion of the brush across paper reflects a steady mind. She also begins organizing records of gifts, letters, and family connections. These small archives help future generations remember alliances and obligations. Quietly, she contributes to the memory of the clan. Occasionally, formal gatherings are held when neighboring families visit. During these events, she appears beside the other women, greeting guests with composed bows. Visitors note her poise and maturity. Some remember hearing about her many years earlier when she first entered the residence. Now they see a woman shaped by patience rather than uncertainty. Reputation in feudal Japan grows slowly, built over decades of consistent behavior. As evening comes, lanterns are lit along the walkways once more. She sits near the garden where she once walked as a young arrival. The pond reflects the sky, and the carp move beneath the surface just as they did years ago. The residence has changed little physically, yet she herself has changed greatly. Her early life here was defined by waiting. Her later life is defined by guidance. The boy, nearly grown now, bows to her before returning to his tutors. She watches him walk down the corridor without calling him back. She understands that her purpose was never to hold him near, but to prepare him to stand away from her. This acceptance is considered strength in her world. Night falls quietly across the estate. Guards take their places at the gates. Wind moves gently through the garden trees, and the paper screens glow softly with lamplight. Within her chamber, she folds her writing materials and sits in stillness. The life she lives is calm, restricted, and dignified, shaped by duty, patience, and careful conduct over many years. And as another peaceful night settles over the residence, her story continues forward within the same quiet rhythm, a life lived not in dramatic events, but in steady endurance inside the ordered world of feudal Japan. The years continue to move gently forward, and the residence itself begins to feel different to her, not because its walls or gardens have changed, but because she now sees it with the understanding of time. When she first arrived, every corridor felt unfamiliar. Every gesture required careful thought, and every sound suggested judgment. Now she walks through the same wooden halls with quiet confidence. She knows which boards creak softly beneath a step, which screens open toward the morning sun, and which garden paths bloom first when spring returns. Her son is now nearly a young man. His visits to the inner chambers grow less frequent, replaced by formal greetings during ceremonies. When he enters, attendants bow to him more deeply than before. She notices the change immediately, yet her own behavior remains steady. She greets him not as a child she once held, but as a member of the clan who carries responsibility. Their conversations become shorter, but more meaningful. He speaks of training, of his instructors, and of the expectations placed upon him. She listens carefully and answers in measured words, reminding him always to balance courage with kindness. Within the women's quarters, she now holds a role almost equal to a senior advisor. Younger concubines or newly arrived noble girls sometimes come under her guidance. She teaches them the very lessons she once struggled to learn: how to bow properly, how to write letters without revealing too much feeling, how to wait without appearing anxious, and how to maintain dignity even when uncertain. She explains that survival in such a household depends less on gaining attention and more on avoiding conflict. Her guidance is gentle but clear, and the younger women respect her not because she commands them, but because her life shows experience. The official wife, too, has grown older. Their interactions are calm and courteous. On certain festival days, they sit in the same hall during prayers, separated by rank, yet united by shared years. Time has removed earlier tension. Both understand that maintaining peace within the residence protected their children and preserved the clan's honor. They exchange seasonal gifts, folded silk, carefully chosen incense, gestures small yet meaningful in a world where direct affection is rarely spoken. Her daily routine now contains more reflection. She spends longer hours reading classical stories and arranging written records. She copies genealogies and preserves letters, ensuring future generations will know the alliances and friendships that supported the clan. This work is quiet but important. Memory in feudal society depended on careful preservation, and she contributes to that continuity. Occasionally, she watches her son from a distance as he trains in the courtyard. She does not step outside to interrupt. From behind a screen, she sees his movements becoming steady and controlled. She feels pride but expresses it only through a slight smile and a calm posture. Visible emotion would embarrass him in front of retainers. Instead, she later sends a short poem praising perseverance, allowing encouragement without public display. Evenings remain peaceful. She drinks tea slowly while listening to distant conversation carried by the night air. Lantern light reflects on the garden pond, and insects hum beyond the outer walls. She understands that her influence now lies not in daily tasks but in what she has already taught. The habits she passed to her son and to the younger women will continue after she is no longer present. Her life, once filled with waiting and uncertainty, has become steady and respected. She holds no official title beyond her position, yet within the residence her presence represents continuity. Servants greet her with deep bows. Attendants consult her before arranging ceremonies. Visitors recognize her as a woman who has lived through many seasons of the household. As night settles softly once more and the residence grows still, she sits near the open screen and watches the moon reflect across the garden stones. The quietness feels familiar and comforting now. The world outside may change with politics and war, but inside these walls her life has followed a calm path shaped by patience, restraint, and time. And so we remain with her in this peaceful moment, the wooden house breathing gently in the night air. As her long journey within the structured world of feudal Japan continues toward its final, reflective years, the residence grows quieter as the years continue, and she now notices the passage of time not through events but through subtle change. New servants replace old ones. Younger attendants bow to her with deeper respect than before. The child she once guided through the corridors now participates in councils beside his father. From her chamber, she sometimes hears distant voices of discussion carried faintly through wooden halls, and although she cannot hear the words, she understands their meaning. The boy she raised is stepping into responsibility. Her daily routine becomes slower but more deliberate. She wakes early as she always has, but instead of lessons or childcare, she begins her morning with long moments of stillness beside the open screen. She watches the garden carefully. The same pine tree that stood when she first arrived has grown broader. Moss now covers stones that were once bare. The pond remains unchanged, yet she sees it differently. The residence has outlasted her youth, and she understands that she has become part of its history. After tea, she continues her writing, though her calligraphy now serves a different purpose. She records memories, not dramatic events, but small details, seasonal festivals, births, visiting families, and alliances formed quietly over decades. These writings will not be public chronicles, yet they help preserve understanding inside the household. Future generations will know who supported the clan and who offered loyalty during difficult years. She also spends time teaching younger women who recently entered the residence. Some arrive nervous, as she once was, unsure of how to speak or move. She corrects them gently. She shows them how to kneel without fatigue, how to hold sleeves while walking, how to pause before answering a question. She explains that harmony protects them more than ambition. Her words carry weight because she herself has lived by them. Her son now visits rarely, not from distance of affection but from duty. When he comes, he kneels formally and speaks of matters he can safely share: harvests, travel, or ceremonial responsibilities. She listens and responds calmly, never interfering with his decisions. Her guidance now comes only in careful suggestions, often delivered through a short poem or a proverb remembered from earlier years. The official wife and she now share a quiet understanding shaped by age. During certain ceremonies, they sit together in the same hall, separated by rank, but united by memory. They have both watched children grow, seasons pass, and retainers come and go. Their conversations are brief yet comfortable. Time has softened formality into respect. In the afternoon, she walks slowly through the garden paths she once crossed as a young arrival. Servants accompany her but remain at a distance. She pauses beside the pond, feeding the carp gently. This walk is no longer presentation for others. It is reflection. Each corner of the garden holds a memory, a festival, a childhood lesson, a moment of waiting long ago. Evenings bring long quiet. She plays the koto softly, not for visitors but for herself. The melodies are slower now, each note held longer. The sound moves through the wooden residence and fades into night air. Some younger attendants listen from a distance, recognizing that they hear not performance but memory expressed through music. Her life has become calm in a new way. Earlier, she lived carefully to secure her place. Now she lives carefully to preserve peace around her. Her influence exists in what continues after her: the habits she taught, the manners she passed forward, and the stability she helped maintain inside the clan. As darkness settles over the estate once more, lanterns glowing faintly along the corridors, she sits beside the open screen watching the moon rise above the garden roofline. The same moon once shone when she first entered this residence as a young woman uncertain of her future. Now it shines upon someone who has quietly endured and quietly shaped the household across many years. The night remains still, and within that stillness her long life inside the ordered world of feudal Japan continues, gentle and steady, like the slow turning of the seasons themselves. The residence has now entered a calmer era of her life, and with this calm comes a different kind of responsibility, not active duty, but memory. In feudal households, stability depended not only on swords and alliances, but on continuity. Traditions needed to be remembered exactly. Ceremonies had to be performed the same way each generation. Small mistakes could embarrass a clan before visiting families. Because she has lived within these walls for so many years, she becomes a living guide to the past. Younger attendants now come to her before important occasions. They kneel beside her and ask how certain rituals should be arranged, where incense must be placed, how many bows should be given, which words should be spoken first when greeting a senior guest. She answers slowly, never rushing. She recalls ceremonies from decades earlier, describing how the hall was arranged, how the lamps were positioned, and how the host stood when welcoming visitors. Her memory protects the household from error. During seasonal festivals, she no longer stands simply as a participant. She watches carefully from a side position, observing whether every gesture follows tradition. If a sleeve is folded incorrectly or a greeting spoken too quickly, she signals quietly to an attendant. No one announces her corrections publicly. Yet afterward, the household understands that the ceremony succeeded because of her guidance. Her son, now a young adult, prepares for larger duties within the clan. Before important decisions, he sometimes visits privately, sitting across from her in the quiet chamber where she once taught him to bow. Their conversations are calm and thoughtful. She does not give commands or advice openly. Instead, she speaks in stories from earlier years, examples of patience, mistakes she witnessed, or leaders who lost loyalty because they ignored small courtesies. Through these gentle stories, she shapes his judgment. She reminds him that authority in their world rests not only on strength but on trust. A leader who shows respect to retainers keeps peace longer than one who rules only through fear. Her lessons remain soft, yet they influence him deeply because they come from experience rather than instruction. Outside the residence, the wider province changes. New retainers join service. Some old families lose status. Messengers arrive with reports from distant territories. Although she does not attend councils, she senses tension from the behavior of servants and the increased movement along corridors. In these moments, she remains especially composed. Her calm reassures those around her. Younger women watch her reaction and learn that steadiness during uncertainty protects the household. She continues her writing as well. The records she keeps grow longer, describing births, marriages, and visiting envoys. She carefully folds these papers and stores them in lacquered boxes. One day, long after she is gone, someone will read them to understand how the clan survived difficult years. Her contribution to history is quiet, but lasting. In the late afternoon, she often sits near the veranda while children of the next generation play in the courtyard. She does not interrupt them. She simply watches, remembering how she once guided a small child along these same floors. Now she allows nurses and tutors to teach, intervening only when necessary. Her role has shifted from teacher to observer, from participant to guardian of memory. As dusk approaches, she lights a small lamp in her chamber and prepares tea slowly. The routine comforts her. Each movement is familiar. The placement of the cup, the angle of the pour, the pause before drinking. Outside, bamboo leaves move softly in the evening wind. The residence feels peaceful, and for the first time she no longer waits for change. She accepts that her life here has reached a stage of quiet completion. Night deepens across the estate. Guards walk their routes. Lanterns glow at the gates. She sits beside the open screen, listening to distant insects and the faint sound of water moving in the pond. Her journey from uncertain arrival to respected elder has happened without sudden turning points, only through years of patience and discipline. Within these wooden walls she has left no monument, yet her influence lives in behavior. in manners repeated by younger women, and in the character of the son she raised. The household continues smoothly, partly because she preserved its harmony across decades. And so the calm continues, her presence now woven into the life of the residence itself, as steady and quiet as the garden that has watched her grow older season by season. We now enter the final years of her long stay within the residence, and these years feel different not because activity stops, but because everything slows. The household still wakes early, servants still cross the corridors carrying trays, and retainers still meet the Lord in distant halls, yet her own movements become softer and more deliberate. She no longer hurries anywhere. The younger attendants now adjust the screens and prepare her writing table before she even asks. Respect has turned into quiet care. Each morning she sits beside the veranda and watches the garden before speaking to anyone. The same stones remain in the same places they were when she first arrived, yet moss has spread across them, and the trees have grown taller. She notices how shadows fall differently than in her youth. Time has changed her more than it has changed the residence. Where once she worried about her position, now she thinks about continuity. Who will remember the proper order of rituals? Who will teach the next generation the correct greetings? And who will preserve harmony when older voices are gone? Her son now holds official responsibilities within the clan. On certain mornings, he passes through the inner corridor in formal clothing, accompanied by retainers. He bows respectfully to her before continuing on, and she returns the bow with steady dignity. Their conversations are short but meaningful. He sometimes asks about customs from years long past, how his father greeted an ally, how a ceremony was arranged during a difficult winter, or how disputes were calmed without open conflict. She answers slowly, choosing words carefully, understanding that memory now guides future decisions. Within the women's quarters, she rarely gives direct instructions anymore. Instead, she observes and corrects gently when needed. A young attendant unsure of how to address a visiting noblewoman comes to her. She demonstrates the proper bow, the timing of speech, and the order in which tea should be offered. These lessons are simple but essential, for in feudal society, courtesy protects relationships as strongly as soldiers guard walls. Her afternoons are often spent arranging and rereading the records she has kept. The letters, poems, and notes she preserved across decades form a quiet history of the household. She remembers each event while holding the paper: a birth celebrated in spring, a difficult year of poor harvest, a marriage alliance that brought peace to the province. None of these memories appear dramatic to an outsider, yet together they explain how the clan endured. Sometimes she hears distant practice in the courtyard, young warriors training with wooden swords just as she once heard when she first entered this home. The sound reaches her chamber faintly. It reminds her that life in the residence continues forward, regardless of any single person. The household is larger than one generation, and she finds comfort in this understanding. Evening comes gently. Lanterns glow along the corridors and servants move quietly so as not to disturb the calm atmosphere. She drinks tea slowly, while watching the sky darken above the roofline. The garden pond reflects the first stars. She no longer waits for visitors or news. Her days are complete in themselves, filled with reflection rather than anticipation. Before sleeping, she often plays a few notes on the kodo. The melody is soft and unhurried, drifting through the wooden halls. Younger attendants pause in the corridor to listen. They may not realize it, but they are hearing a sound that has filled this residence for decades. a sound connected to patience, composure, and continuity. As the night deepens and the estate grows still, she rests knowing that her life here has quietly fulfilled its purpose. She entered as a careful young woman watched by many eyes, and she remains now as a respected elder whose presence brings calm to those around her. The world outside may continue to change with wars and alliances, yet within these walls, her steady influence has shaped the rhythm of daily life. The moon rises above the garden once again, shining upon the same roofs and walkways that have witnessed every stage of her journey. And in that quiet silver light, the residence holds her story, not dramatic, not loud, but enduring, carried forward in the habits and manners of those who learned from her. In these later days, the residence feels almost timeless to her, as if the years have folded gently into one another. The same corridors she once walked nervously now welcome her with familiarity. Servants no longer announce her presence loudly. They simply bow as she passes, understanding her place without words. She moves slowly along the veranda each morning, one hand lightly touching the wooden railing polished by generations before her. The air carries the scent of pine and distant cooking fires from the outer kitchens, and she pauses often to look across the garden, letting the quietness settle around her. Her son now spends most of his days beyond the inner residence, overseeing duties that once belonged to his father. Yet he still visits her when possible. He kneels before her and speaks with respectful calm, asking her thoughts about small matters of conduct rather than strategy. He does not seek commands, he seeks balance. She answers carefully, reminding him to consider not only loyalty but kindness, not only strength but patience. Her guidance now is not instruction but reflection, offered through simple words and sometimes through a brief poem written on folded paper. The women's quarters continue their steady rhythm. Younger attendants prepare garments, arrange seasonal flowers, and practice formal greetings under her quiet supervision. She rarely corrects openly. Instead, she demonstrates by example. When she bows fully. When she speaks, she chooses words slowly. Those around her copy these habits without realizing they are learning. In this way, she teaches even when she is silent. In the afternoons, she often sits beside the pond and feeds the carp small grains brought by an attendant. The fish gather near the surface, moving calmly through the water. Watching them, she reflects on how her own life moved within boundaries, protected, yet confined, shaped by expectation yet filled with purpose. She remembers the uncertainty of her arrival, the careful waiting, the raising of her child, and the long years of observation. None of it was dramatic, yet all of it mattered. The official wife, now also aged, sometimes joins her during quiet evenings. They share tea without formal tension. Conversation is gentle, often about memories of earlier festivals or the growth of the next generation. Rank still exists between them, yet familiarity softens distance. Together they have preserved harmony inside these walls across many seasons. As dusk falls, lanterns glow again along the corridors. The household quiets after evening meals, and the sounds of activity fade into stillness. She returns to her chamber and opens a small box containing her written records and poems. She reads a few lines from years past and smiles softly. The words remind her that life here was not defined by one moment, but by steady endurance across time. Before resting, she plays a final melody on the koto, letting the notes linger in the night air. The sound drifts through the residence, reaching corners she may never again walk. Younger attendants pause and listen, sensing calm without knowing why. The music carries memory of seasons, of growth, of patience. The moon rises once more above the garden roof, casting pale light across the stones and water. She lies down upon her bedding with peaceful understanding. Her place in the household is secure not because of rank or power, but because she became part of its rhythm. Long after her footsteps fade, the habits she practiced and the composure she taught will remain within the people who continue to live here. And so the quiet night settles over the residents of feudal Japan, holding her story gently within its wooden walls as time moves forward beyond a single lifetime. The residence now moves around her more than she moves within it. Younger attendants cross the corridors quickly. Children of the next generation practice their greetings in the courtyard, and retainers arrive and depart through the outer gates with news of the wider province. She no longer follows every activity closely. Instead, she watches from the veranda, seated upon a cushion placed where sunlight reaches gently in the morning and shade arrives by afternoon. From this single place, she can see the garden, the pond, and part of the walkway where servants pass, and this view becomes her connection to the life of the household. Each morning, an attendant prepares tea and sets it beside her writing table. She lifts the cup slowly, turning it slightly before drinking, just as she did many years earlier when she first learned proper manners. The gesture has never changed. Even now she performs it carefully because habit and dignity remain important until the very end of life in feudal culture. The young women who serve her notice this and imitate her movements unconsciously, continuing traditions simply by watching. Her son, now fully responsible for many duties of the clan, still comes to see her when he can. He kneels beside her and speaks quietly about his journeys, about villages he has visited, and about the people who depend on his decisions. She listens with patience, offering gentle reminders drawn from memory. She tells him that the strength of a household rests on trust, and trust grows from fairness shown in small actions. He bows deeply before leaving, understanding that these quiet conversations guide him more than formal lessons ever did. During the afternoons, she often rereads the old letters and records she preserved. The paper has aged slightly, the ink softened, yet the memories remain clear. She recalls the early days when she was uncertain, the nights spent waiting, the birth of her child, and the steady passing of seasons. These reflections do not bring sadness. Instead, they bring calm acceptance. Her life has followed its path, and she has fulfilled the role expected of her. Sometimes the children of the new generation visit. They kneel politely, curious about the gentle elder who lives within the inner rooms. She tells them simple stories about the garden, about the carp in the pond, and about the importance of bowing respectfully to elders. The lessons seem small, yet they carry forward the manners that hold the clan together. The children leave smiling, and she watches them go with quiet satisfaction. As evening approaches, the residence returns to the peaceful atmosphere she has known for decades. Lanterns are lit, and shadows stretch along the wooden floors. The sounds of the outer grounds fade, leaving only the soft hum of insects and the faint ripple of water in the pond. She plays a few slow notes on the koto, her fingers moving gently across the strings. The melody is simple, unhurried, and familiar to those who have lived here long enough to remember her earlier years. Night settles fully. She lies down upon her bedding the same way she did on her first night within these walls, though her thoughts are no longer filled with uncertainty. Instead, she rests with understanding. The household will continue. New generations will walk these corridors, and the traditions she practiced will remain in their behavior. The moonlight filters through the paper screens, illuminating the quiet room. Outside, the garden stands unchanged beneath the night sky, and within the residence, her long life has become part of its enduring memory. Her story does not end loudly or suddenly. It simply blends into the steady rhythm of the household she helped sustain. The seasons turn once more, and spring returns to the residence just as it did many years earlier when she first stepped through its gates. Plum blossoms open quietly along the garden edge, and pale petals fall onto the same stones she has watched for decades. She notices how familiar everything feels. The sounds of servants preparing the morning, the sliding of paper doors, the distant voices of retainers greeting one another in the outer courtyard. None of it surprises her now. The residence has become not merely the place where she lives, but the place that holds her entire life. Her strength has grown gentler. She walks less and rests more often, yet her presence still influences those around her. Younger attendants visit in the mornings, kneeling beside her cushion to greet her respectfully before beginning their work. They ask small questions: how to greet an elder from a visiting clan, how to arrange a writing table properly, how long incense should burn during evening prayers. She answers patiently, never rushing her words. Even simple advice carries importance because tradition must pass carefully from one person to another. Her son continues to visit whenever duties allow. Now his clothing is that of a leader, and retainers wait respectfully at a distance while he kneels before her. Their conversations are quiet and thoughtful. He speaks of maintaining peace among villages, of resolving disagreements between families, and of preparing younger warriors for service. She listens and reminds him gently that people remember kindness longer than authority. A fair ruler earns loyalty without demanding it. He bows deeply before leaving, understanding that her calm wisdom steadies him. In the afternoons, she spends long moments watching the pond. The carp move slowly beneath the water, their paths unhurried. The sight comforts her. She recognizes that her own life has followed a similar pattern: steady, contained, and continuous. The boundaries that once felt restrictive now feel familiar. Within them, she found purpose and dignity. The official wife, now aged as well, occasionally joins her for tea. They sit side by side facing the garden, speaking softly about past festivals and the children who now guide the clan. Their earlier distance has become mutual respect shaped by shared years. They have witnessed the same changes and preserved the same household. No formal declarations are needed. Quiet understanding is enough. Evening approaches and lantern light glows along the corridor once again. She listens to the faint sound of training in the outer yard and smiles softly, remembering the small child she once watched learning to walk. The residence continues its life beyond her, exactly as it should. She no longer worries about position or future. She trusts the rhythm she helped maintain. Before night deepens, she arranges her writing materials and composes a final short poem describing the falling blossoms and the still pond. The characters are written carefully, each stroke steady despite age. She folds the paper and places it among her preserved records, leaving behind not instruction but memory. As darkness settles across the estate, she rests peacefully, aware that her life has become part of the household's quiet history. The wooden halls, the garden paths, and the soft light of lanterns now carry echoes of her many years. Nothing dramatic marks this moment. Instead, her story fades gently into the continuing rhythm of feudal Japan, where generations change yet tradition remains. The household wakes again beneath a pale morning sky, but now the rhythm feels slower, softer, almost as if the residence itself understands that an era within its walls is gently coming to a close. Servants move with quieter steps than usual. Doors slide open carefully. No one speaks loudly near her chambers. Respect in feudal Japan was often shown through silence, and the silence around her has grown deeper. She rises later than she once did. An attendant helps arrange her robes, choosing simple fabrics suited to comfort rather than presentation. She thanks the attendant with a small nod and sits beside the open screen where she has spent so many mornings watching the garden. The pond reflects early light, and the carp gather near the surface waiting for the food she has offered them countless times before. She scatters a few grains into the water slowly, her movements gentle and unhurried. The residence continues its daily life around her. Messengers still arrive at the outer gate. Retainers still discuss harvests and duties. Children still practice greetings in the courtyard. Yet within her chamber, the atmosphere is peaceful and still. Younger attendants visit quietly to bow and receive her blessing before beginning their tasks. They do not linger long, but each bows deeply, understanding they are greeting someone who has lived through the household's many seasons. Her son comes in the late morning. He removes his formal sandals at the threshold and kneels beside her cushion. For a moment neither speaks. He simply bows his head, and she rests her hand lightly upon his sleeve. A rare gesture of affection permitted only in privacy. Their conversation is calm and brief. She reminds him to continue guiding the household with patience, to listen before deciding, and to protect the harmony of those who depend upon him. He promises quietly and bows again, his expression steady yet softened. After he leaves, she sits for a long time watching the garden. Wind moves the leaves gently across the pond, and sunlight passes slowly along the veranda. She no longer feels the waiting that filled her early years. Instead, she feels completion. Her life within these walls has followed its full course. Arrival, uncertainty, motherhood, guidance, and memory. In the afternoon, she asks for her writing set. With careful movements, she writes a final message, not an order and not a record, but a reflection. She writes of patience, of measured speech, and of harmony between people. She folds the paper and places it within the lacquered box holding her earlier poems and notes. The box will remain among the household's belongings, and someone one day will open it and read her calm words. Evening falls slowly. Lanterns glow softly and attendants prepare her bedding. She listens to the familiar sounds. A distant gate closing, a servant's footsteps, the soft ripple of water outside. None of it is new, yet all of it feels precious because it has accompanied her entire life here. She lies down facing the paper screen where moonlight begins to shine through. The same moon once lit her first night in the residence when she arrived uncertain and watched by many eyes. Now it lights a room filled with quiet acceptance. The household will continue. New children will walk the corridors. New voices will echo in the halls. The traditions she followed will remain in their gestures and manners. The night grows still, and the garden rests beneath the moon. Her story does not end with ceremony or announcement. It settles gently into memory, becoming part of the residence itself. As lasting as the pond, the stones, and the wooden beams that have witnessed every stage of her life. Morning returns once again to the residence, and life continues as it always has, though the atmosphere feels softer, almost reflective. The attendants open the paper screens and allow the cool air to enter her chamber. Light spreads slowly across the tatami floor, touching the writing table, the folded robes, and the small lacquered box where her poems rest. She wakes calmly, not with effort, but with quiet awareness, as if she has simply followed the rhythm she has known for decades. Servants bow when they enter, yet their movements are slower now, careful not to disturb her rest. They bring tea and place it beside her. She lifts the cup gently, pausing to look at the garden before drinking. Outside, the pond remains still, and the carp move beneath the surface just as they always have. The residence shows no sign of ending, only continuation. This realization comforts her. Her life was never meant to stand apart from the household. It was meant to become part of its steady existence. Throughout the day, people come quietly to greet her. Young attendants kneel and bow deeply, grateful for the lessons she offered them. Some bring small flowers from the garden, placing them respectfully beside her cushion. She thanks them softly, her voice calm. She no longer instructs them because they already carry her teachings in their behavior. They bow properly, speak gently, and move with measured steps, habits learned simply by watching her over many years. In the afternoon, her son visits again. This time he remains longer. He speaks not of duties or decisions, but of memories, festivals from his childhood, lessons she taught him, and the poems she once sent to encourage him. She listens, smiling faintly, understanding that the connection between them now rests in remembrance rather than guidance. She reminds him quietly that a household survives when its members care for one another, not only when they obey authority. He bows deeply and promises to remember. As evening approaches, the residence prepares for night. Lanterns are lit along the corridor. Guards take their posts at the gate. The sounds of activity fade into gentle quiet. Attendants arrange her bedding and sit nearby, ready if she needs assistance. She asks for the screen to remain slightly open so she can see the moonlit garden. She lies resting while the moonlight falls across the room. The pond reflects silver light, and the wind moves softly through the trees. She watches these familiar sights peacefully. The life she lived within these walls, the waiting, the raising of her child, the guidance she offered, has become part of the household's memory. Nothing is dramatic, nothing sudden. Her story blends into the steady rhythm she has always followed. The night deepens, and the residence remains calm. Outside, the province continues under the leadership of the son she helped shape. Inside, the manners and traditions she practiced continue through those she taught. Her presence no longer needs to act or instruct. It simply exists as memory and influence. And so within the quiet wooden house of feudal Japan, her long journey reaches its final peaceful stillness, leaving behind not monuments or proclamations, but something more lasting, a way of living carried forward by others. The final days within the residence arrive without announcement. No bell rings, no messenger declares a change. The household continues its familiar routine, yet those closest to her sense the quiet shift. Attendants step more softly along the corridor. Conversations are hushed near her chamber. The garden, unchanged in its calm beauty, seems almost to pause with them. She rests upon her bedding, the paper screen slightly open so she can still see the pond. The carp glide slowly beneath the surface, just as they did when she first came to this place as a young woman. The sight comforts her. Life here has always moved in gentle cycles, sunrise to sunset, spring to winter, generation to generation. She has followed those cycles patiently, and now she simply rests within them. Her son comes once more. He kneels beside her and bows deeply, longer than before. There are no formal words, only quiet presence. She lifts her hand slightly, and he understands. Her expression is peaceful. She does not speak at length. Instead, she offers a few soft words, reminding him to lead with fairness and to protect the harmony of the household. He promises again, and for a moment he remains there, not as a lord, but as the child she once guided along the corridors. The attendants gather nearby, silent and respectful. They have learned from her for years, and now they carry those lessons naturally. They know how to bow, how to move gently, how to maintain calm in difficult moments. All habits formed simply by living beside her. Evening falls slowly. Lanterns glow faintly along the walkway, and the moon rises above the garden roof. The residence is very still. Beyond the outer walls, the province continues its life, unaware of this quiet moment within the inner chambers. Inside, the soft night air moves through the screen and touches the room. She closes her eyes peacefully. Her life has not been marked by battles or proclamations, but by patience, composure, and care for those around her. The household does not change suddenly after this moment. There is no loud mourning. Instead, the next morning the routines continue. Servants prepare tea, children practice greetings, and ceremonies are performed exactly as she taught them. Her writing box remains preserved. The poems and notes she left behind are read by future generations who wish to understand the past of their household. The manners she practiced appear in the gestures of young attendants who never met her. The son she raised leads with calm restraint, remembered for fairness and steadiness, and so her story does not truly end. It simply becomes part of the residence itself, part of the wooden corridors, the garden pond, the bowing greetings, and the quiet dignity of daily life in feudal Japan. Her presence fades gently into tradition, carried forward in behavior rather than memory alone. As night settles once more over the silent garden and the moonlight rests upon the still water, we leave this place softly, the paper doors closed behind us, the past remaining calm and undisturbed. If you enjoyed this slow journey through history, you may rest now, and when you wake, another distant time and world will be waiting for us to explore together.